Call the meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Soulsby?
Here.
Councilor Savage?
Here.
Councilor Fleck?
Here.
Councilor Stennett?
Here.
Councilor Urban?
Here.
Councilor Roberts?
Here.
Mayor Galley?
Here. For the state of the city, I'm going to take my mask off because I cannot make it through this with it on. Good evening. This is my 6th and final State of the City. If you've not heard, I will not be running for mayor in the November election, but I have filed to run for House District 12 state representative. Because of this tonight, I want to reflect back on the years since I began serving on City Council in 2009. A lot has changed. The city has changed. Issues have changed. And over the years, I have changed. I want to take a moment to thank everyone that has worked with me over the years. And thank you for your patience in me and your trust that you put in me. I want to thank all of those that shared their insights and knowledge with me. I did not change on my own. You all helped me. I've made many new friends and learned valuable skills as I've worked with people throughout the community. Many of the friends that I have made are from different walks of life, political parties, or philosophies. I may not share the same opinions or views, but they are still my friends. Their views and opinions have helped make me more accepting, more respectful, more understanding of the needs of the community. I can honestly say in the last nearly 12 years has increased my overwhelming pride of this great community. It has truly been a pleasure getting to work with so many people, including members of this council and previous councilors. We may not always agree or have the same ideas, but we respect each other's views. We have had the opportunity to make some really tough decisions, and we have many more tough decisions to make. But collectively, we have made those decisions with the best interests of the community at heart. Tonight, I want to express some thanks to some that have helped me perform my responsibilities as a councilor and as mayor. I grew up on Dugan Lane, just south of town. Our driveway was long and went past the neighbor's house. I would ride my dirt bike up and down the driveway for hours. In 1976, new neighbors moved in. They had to put up with an annoying teenager riding past their house. Once I got a driver's license, I had several vehicles going through high school. Each one had a loud stereo, a very loud stereo. I graduated high school with their oldest daughter, Pam, and we have remained friends since we were in high school. After I was elected to my first term as mayor, I was talking with Pam, and she used to say, when I would go past their house with my stereo full blast, her parents would say, "There goes your future mayor." I would like to publicly apologize to Pete and Angie Lightcap for being such an annoying neighbor, but I also want to thank them for believing in my potential over 40 years ago. It's my pleasure to give Pete and Angie Lightcap the Mayoral Certificate of Appreciation. They could not be here tonight, but I will make sure that they get that. For business, I would like to recognize Weyerhaeuser Lumber Company. Not only has Weyerhaeuser provided me with a better than average income for the last 33 years, they have also been great stewards of the community, participating in local events, providing grants to nonprofits, scholarships to high school students, donating lumber to Habitat for Humanity and other nonprofits, addressing our much needed housing crisis, and most recently allowing the city to store bridge beams on their plant site. But for me, shortly after being elected to mayor, Brent Chabon, the plant manager, directed his lead team to allow me to be flexible with my schedule to take care of mayor business while necessary during work hours, whether meetings, ribbon cuttings, luncheon, or even barbecuing for Peace Health staff. This support took a lot of pressure off me being able to focus on both my work as well as my elected position without worrying about conflicting schedule. Weyerhaeuser is a direct reflection of making Cottage Grove a better community. Mr. Chabon. I also would like to recognize the Woodard Foundation and Chris Woodard. Back in April of 2020, the Woodard Foundation had the foresight to know the impact that the pandemic was going to have for nonprofits. They donated $100,000 to the Community Foundation to distribute, with $90,000 for specific nonprofits and the remaining $10,000 at discretion of the Community Foundation. This is a true example of supporting the community you live in, and it's a great example of why Cottage Grove is such a strong community. Chris could not be here tonight, but I will make sure he gets his as well. There have been many others that have contributed to helping me serve this community. So many that we'd be here all night if I read that list. Thank you for all of those that have made this experience serving worthwhile and fulfilling. Typically in my state of the city, this is where I would share a list of accomplishments performed by our city staff or the challenges the city has faced during the last year. We have quite a list from the year. We have completed many projects. We will have a major impact in the community for years to come. Projects such as Safe Routes to School, where we completed over 1 mile of road improvements and 2 miles of new sidewalks to provide a safe way for the students to get to the school at the middle school. Or completion of the effluent storage pond at the wastewater treatment plant that helps provide a sustainable and innovative approach to irrigating public spaces while also reducing the community's impact on the water quality of the Willamette River. Or renovation of the community center / library and the reopening of the library with full hours and staff last week. Or I could describe the challenges the city has faced in the last year, such as staffing and material shortages that also were faced by local businesses and industry. But even short-staffed police calls for service were handled, roads were plowed, and permits for construction were processed. But tonight I want to spend more time telling experiences that have demonstrated what is being called as civic charity. Currently, there's a shortage of civic charity. Throughout our nation, there has grown an overwhelming movement of polarization, contention, and contempt. So much that former examples of true bipartisan statesmanship have all but disappeared. Not too long ago, the community benefited from true bipartisan efforts from the Oregon congressional delegation when Senators Wyden, Senator Smith, and Congressman DeFazio worked together and even brought other leaders throughout the country to resolve our hospital crisis. They had it solved in a matter of weeks rather than months or years that any kind of action would take now. The same type of polarization and contention and contempt, which has become a commonplace in federal and state level and is beginning to rear its ugly head in communities around the state. Former federal judge Thomas Griffith commented that our country and Constitution is built for vigorous disagreement, but it cannot withstand contempt. He went on to explain that people think so ill of each other that they don't trust each other at all. He went on to describe the contempt as a hatred or distrust, even desire to destroy people and their beliefs rather than spend effort to understand and try to find common ground to achieve the shared goals of the community. Tonight, I want to share stories from the past year that show that civic charity still exists in the community. During our recent clinic at the community center, a young man came in wet, cold, and very shaken and distraught. People attending the clinic came up to a staff member asking if they could get the young man something to eat. Another person offered to give him the coat that they were wearing. Someone called the church to see if they could pick up some warm clothes and shoes. The young man was able to get rest, take a shower, change into dry clothing, and enjoy a plate of warm food. I also received a report from a friend in the community who had a frightening and dangerous situation occur across the street from their house. The mother and child that lived across the street from their house came for help because of a family crisis. After solving the language barrier by calling another member of the community, the friend called the police for assistance. The police quickly arrived, but their presence created anxiety for the mother and child, and the young boy began to cry and feared for his safety and the safety of a family member. My friend witnessed our officers put their sincere and complete attention at calming the nerves and comforting the mother and child. Once the nerves were calmed and the comfort was given, the officer focused on resolving the crisis. The mother and son were placed in safety. My friend was impressed and touched by the sincerity and professionalism the officer demonstrated as they addressed the needs of the individual first, then worked to resolve the crisis. Another example may some appear mundane or expected, but a result of the city's installation of the new advanced water meters that demonstrates the desire to improve the service in the community. Our utility staff reached a customer to make them aware of a flow of over 300 gallons every hour at their home. The customer was in his car traveling north, but promptly turned around to return to the house. Upon arrival to the home, they found the upstairs toilet that had been flushed by a house guest was continuously running at full flow. Using the new meter information, our staff also has been able to assist customers who called very concerned about high monthly water statements, a significant increase of water usage. The staff reviewed the meter information and was able to identify that the irrigation system that was supposed to come on only in early morning was also coming on late in the evening. Thank you. It is exciting to see staff eagerly use tools provided to them to find ways to help the members of the community. Another story is about a 57-year-old woman I'll call Hope. Hope has been living unsheltered for 8 years in Cottage Grove. She started coming to the mobile shower that is operating through partnership with the city and the community sharing. She then offered to volunteer at the mobile shower each week. During conversation with staff, Hope mentioned she needed counseling and stated most unsheltered people do. Staff member called a local counselor and asked if she could take a new client. Hope has been seeing the counselor every week for the last few months. Hope has applied for and now works as one of the staff through community sharing to operate the warming shelters and has been working every night that they've been open. By working with Hope, staff has had the opportunity to listen and begin to understand in a small way what life is like for those unsheltered in the community. Hope's success continues as she signed up with Carry It Forward has completed the front door assessment, which allows people to get into a housing list. She is looking forward to permanent housing and working to improve her life. Hope has expressed her appreciation for being able to take a shower weekly and takes pride in her volunteer work to help run the mobile shower and working with the warming shelters. Coming to the city at the next council meeting, there will be an action item to create a special line item for a special trust fund to accept and expense funds donated as results from efforts by Bruce Kelch of the Presbyterian Church Earth and Social Justice Committee and the Ministerial Association. The funds are to be used by police officers while in the line of duty that come across someone that is in need of a small act of kindness. These funds can be used by officers at their discretion to address an immediate need. Finally, I want to recognize the efforts of those who spend hours discussing, planning, and preparing to bring back events and activities that makes Cottage Grove a great place to live. I'm not sure everyone understands the depth of discussions that are held and the opinions shared just to prepare for such events we had this year. Each of those involved demonstrated in the discussion of civic charity as they considered the fears and concerns of everyone and put together plans to successfully hold safe and fun events. We saw record attendance at the Eugene Symphony, concerts in the park, Bohemia Days adapted and even brought us an exciting new event, the Orcart races. The Halloween Howl moved and became the Halloween Hootenanny in Bohemia Park. Downtown Christmas also adjusted and created a Christmas kickoff in the park that saw more involvement from members of the community than ever. As we face challenges in the coming year and years to come, I'm optimistic the members of this community can continue to increase their civic charity. The stories I have shared are just a tiny glimpse of the civic charity that exists in Cottage Grove. Let's not lose sight of that civic charity in our community. No matter the challenges or issues, we will be able to always treat each other as friends. That when in the heat of a vigorous debate or discussion ends, we will leave that on the table and remain friends. I want to close with words from Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address, made nearly 161 years ago on March 4th, 1861, that still rings true today. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passions may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. As mayor of the city of Cottage Grove, I want to express my sincere appreciation to everyone in the community for their individual efforts to make the community a better place to live for every person. It will be only together as friends that we will be able to address the challenges that face our community. Thank you for letting me serve this community as a counselor and as your mayor. It has truly been an honor and a privilege. Thank you. I'm going to pause for a minute just to let those that don't wish to stay for the business part to leave if they choose to. And I can get my schedule back. So I have nobody signed up to speak on items not on the agenda, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to skip the reading of that portion and we will move right into item 6A, public hearing for ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Land Use Title Map 1-4 Land Use Map for Don Norton. And Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councilors. First, I'd like to start by adding 2 items to the record. 2 letters regarding this application were received by staff prior to the 5 p.m. today deadline. The first letter from Emily in opposition to the item, Emily Norton Tuaninga, pardon pronunciation there, 1142 Chestnut Avenue, Cottage Grove, Oregon, 97424. 1 letter in support of the proposed ordinance from Nathaniel Norton Tuaninga, 81868 Lost Valley Lane, Dexter, Oregon, 97421. I believe that those letters have been provided to council for your review. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive comments on the proposed amendment of the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Diagram Map and Title 14 Cottage Grove Development Code Land Use District Map to redesignate 0.55 acres located on and adjacent to Chestnut Avenue and North L Street from low density residential to medium density residential on the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Map to allow these properties to be developed for a mix of medium density residential and commercial uses, and rezone this property to RC residential commercial to reflect the proposed comprehensive plan designation. The properties proposed for redesignation are tax lot 400, also known as 1142 Chestnut Avenue. It's a single family dwelling, and tax lot 300, which is unaddressed and currently has only accessory structures. Both parcels are owned by Don Norton, who is also the applicant. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on November 17th, 2021, and did not recommend approval of MCPA 3-21 to council. The minutes from the Planning Commission public hearing held on the 17th are attached to this memo, as is the staff report and draft ordinance. It is now appropriate that council hold a public hearing on the ordinance.
Okay.
And for council's information, those 3 letters that Eric mentioned are on the website on the agenda.
Okay, at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. And so I have signed up online. I think the only one online is Mr. Kelch. I'll take you first. Mr. Kelch.
And you do have those written comments from them as well. So,
Okay. So in the
Hear me
room.
now? Can you hear
Go
me
ahead.
now?
Yes.
Okay. There we go. Sorry, technical difficulties on my end. Either I had both the phone and the computer set. So, well, I guess what I would say, as you'd expect me to say, is that Cottage Grove is in need of additional housing, and it's also in need of economic development. And it seems like Don's proposal is, in terms of what the city needs to do, speaks to the fact that the comprehensive plan needs to be, as in point 4 in your materials, needs to be adaptable and adjustable to the times and the conditions of the community. And so what I would say is I would encourage the council to consider the proposal seriously as another way of introducing a different kind of model of housing. Don's proposal is co-housing, but also with the opportunity for some entrepreneurial opportunities for people. And so given that, I think you can address 2 issues at once, in a sense, that it provides the opportunity for additional housing, which is badly needed in the community, and it also provides an opportunity for some economic development, to be determined what that is. And so as you review this proposal and the recommendation by the city planner, I think it's worth noting the positives that can come out of this. I'm sure that with this and other proposals that sort of push the limits sometimes of what the regulations in the past have been, but if one is future oriented, you've got to look at it and see with anybody who's making a proposal what the goal is, and if the goal is one that the city desires, to try and work with the developer or the person creating this project as much as possible so that you can find a good middle ground that moves the project forward and moves the city forward. So those are my thoughts on the project. Don's shown me the property. I've looked at it. It's on the edge, as you know, of the Mount David land. It seems like it'd be a good project to support. So I would say go for it and continue to discuss this proposal and other proposals like that provide different models of housing in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the room, I will take Don Norton.
I'm Don Norton. I live at 239 Adams Avenue. Trying to figure out where I live. I have the property at 1142 Chestnut Avenue, and this is the subject property. As you know, and you've seen in the staff report, the staff went through all the conditions of approval and found no problem with it, and every criteria was met. Although the Planning Commission decided that wasn't good enough. And so we're here again. And I guess I'd like to just start with introducing myself a bit of those who aren't aware of who I am and why I'm proposing this particular plan. Now, I came to South Lane County in 1974 in order to build a new town out at Cerro Gordo that wouldn't use automobiles. And we spent a lot of time after 4 years of several hundred people and institutions working on this, we produced a base plan for Cerro Gordo. Now, that was a very ambitious project and had limited success in doing what we proposed in that base plan. But when I go through it and I look at it, you know, all of the elements that we put in there 42 years ago, are still very real. As Mayor Gowing said earlier, issues change, but some issues don't change. And one of the issues that hasn't changed is the way housing is developed. And it was started back, you know, with the Eisenhower Interstate Highway Project and people loving automobiles. And the development went from there, and we learned in the following decades that this wasn't particularly a good way of doing things. And so now we're looking at the situation as, oh my God, there's a crisis. Well, you know, we can only do what one person can do with one piece of land in this space right now. And so I look at this situation, the land that I happen to own, right on adjacent to Mount David, which is still open and undeveloped, but you just look down to the west and you see the same pattern of development that was promoted in the 60s and the 70s, and a lot of the reason why people have moved up to this area because it's uninhabitable down there anymore. It's like the air's bad, the congestion's bad. Okay, we know that agenda. But when we look at what's going on in Cottage Grove, how are things being developed, it's very much the same way. Now, I see Richard's getting nervous, so he wants to.
No, you're running out of time. You need to wrap up.
So I want to say that I'm trying to experiment with 3 or 4, half a dozen things. It's an experiment in housing, which is using a mixed use of 3 family houses, 3 families, and then probably a half a dozen singles or people who like each other pretty well. We're also trying to deal with the energy use. So this housing is all solar powered, or at least we put up the infrastructure to gather that solar power. We're going to try to address transportation issues by putting in a co-housing unit that everyone would agree to the CC&Rs that would say we will not own private automobiles here. Whatever transportation we would need would be provided in the housing unit and shared. Most traffic, as you know, or most automobiles are parked, 95% of the time, and we use a little bit of them. So
Okay, Don, I'm going to cut you off. You're way over your time.
Way over my time. But I want to
Don.
pick up the last item. The last item is YRC. And that's what I didn't seem to be able to articulate to the Planning Commission, as they said, well, why can you do everything with R2, why do RC? Well, the one thing that I believe is necessary here is because it's going to have an incubator on it. We're trying to develop this as a space where we can invite others from outside of the property purpose to be able to come in and develop whatever plans they have, much
Okay.
like the.
Okay, Don, sit down.
Okay, sorry, Jeff. I would like to praise you more, but right now.
Okay, I'd like to call Lawrence Landon.
Evening. As I said, I'm Lawrence Landon. I'm sort of new in the community, about 2.5 months, I think. I live at 230 North K Street, which is 3 houses away from the proposed land use. I have a couple of concerns. The one that's pretty important to me is the consideration to zone this for commercial. Because I don't know what's going to happen in the next few years. Who might get a hold of that property in 2 years from now, 5 years from now? And what might happen to that property once it's zoned commercial. And the Planning Commission did talk about this, and they said that Don could do development the way he's proposing it now without zoning it commercial. And the other part is that I kind of fail to see the value to the neighborhood. It's almost like putting a micro neighborhood within an existing neighborhood. And I worry about all of the extra everything, traffic, the use of the infrastructure, going from a low density to a medium density, and how many people are going to be in that small area, et cetera, et cetera. I guess that's pretty much my main concerns. Thanks for the consideration.
And I'd like to call Laura Landon.
Can you hear me okay? And that would be me, Laura Landon. We also submitted a letter earlier this afternoon, like around 4:15, but for some reason I didn't hear our names added into the letters. Anyway, I have one I'll give to you. And I'll just read it for now, and then I just want to make a couple really quick comments afterwards. Okay, the proposed zoning change for 1142 Chestnut Avenue, Cottage Grove. Dear City Council, how does the proposed development benefit the surrounding neighborhood? As homeowners living only 3 houses from the proposed rezoning, we oppose changing the zoning of the property located at 1142 Chestnut Avenue. We are concerned about the probable negative impact on the value of our home and our fellow neighbors' homes as well. Preserving the assets of the historic Northwest neighborhood is part of the charm and character of this community. Chipping away at the endangered boundaries of supporting vintage homes threatens the integrity of maintaining the established greater residential neighborhood. We thank you for this opportunity to voice our concerns, Laura and Lawrence Landon. And I just want to add to that, you know, like I know there's the proper historic district, and that's protected by certain things. But then there's the expansion of the older homes in the area as well. And you have to protect these neighborhoods. I love Don's idea. I just don't think it's appropriate for our neighborhood. And I feel like if we don't, as homeowners, keep the area intact, then we won't have people that can afford to maintain these beautiful gems of architecture in the neighborhood and in this community. They will not do it. And those places will disappear and disrepair, and we'll never get them back. So please, I plead with you, please don't turn this into a commercial property. I thank you for your time. And I want to submit this letter. Thank you.
Okay, so I have no more signed up on there, so I will close the hearing. Brings us to item 7, consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
You had to sign up before the beginning of the meeting. I'm sorry. It's the way the rules are. I've already closed the public hearing. You don't.
You've
No.
missed your opportunity.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, brings us to item 8, resolution and ordinances. Item A is a resolution authorizing support and required 20% contribution for the Economic Development Administration Economic Adjustment Assistance Program grant application. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Economic Development Administration is accepting applications for the EDA Competitive Economic Adjustment Assistant Grants under financial year 2021 American Rescue Plan Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant Notice of Funding Opportunity. In 2015, following an extensive public process, Council adopted the Main Street Refinement Plan. That plan included the reconstruction of East Main Street from 8th Street to to the Coast Fork Willamette River, and North Street from the Armory to the Community Center. Improvements to the alleys and north and south of Main Street were also included in the adopted plan. Cost estimates for the Main Street revitalization plan completed by staff in 2020 found the approximate value of the fully designed and construction plan to be over $13 million. The ceiling for this EDA-EAA grant is $5 million. Therefore, staff is proposing to limit the project scope at this time to Main Street reconstruction only. The EDA grant request will be for $5 million towards the total project cost of $5 million. The city's match of 20% will be in the form of in-kind and cash contributions totaling $1 million. It is necessary at this time that the City Council adopt a resolution to authorize support for the submittal of the grant application to the EDA and acknowledge its required 20% contribution should the grant be awarded to the city. Recommended that the resolution be adopted.
We have a resolution number.
2059.
Councillor Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, move that the council adopt resolution 2059.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Solty?
Aye.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Stennett?
Aye.
Counselor Irving?
Aye.
Counselor Roberts?
Aye.
Mayor Gowing?
Aye. Okay, item B is a second vote on ordinance 3153, repealing the chapter 5.12 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code regarding tobacco retail licensing. Mr. Myers.
So the City Council had adopted a tobacco retail licensing program a number of years ago after the county had, as a part of the county actions. As a result of the legislature in the last session adopting a statewide tobacco licensing program, we decided to join. The council decided back in November, to adopt and allow the state to come in and operate and enforce their state law, making our ordinance unnecessary. We've had the first reading, the first vote in December, and this is the second and final vote to adopt the ordinance repealing our local tobacco licensing program.
Councillor Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, move that the city council adopt ordinance number 3153.
Second.
Have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Solty?
Aye.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Stennett?
Aye.
Counselor Irvin?
Aye.
Counselor Roberts?
Aye.
Mayor Gowing?
Aye. Okay, we have first vote for ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map and Title 1-4. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council has held the public hearing on the proposed amendment of the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Diagram and Title 14 Cottage Grove Development Code Land Use District Map to designate 0.55 acres on or adjacent to Chestnut Avenue and North L Street from low density residential to medium density residential for the purposes of a future proposed mixed use development with a land use designation of residential commercial. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the attached ordinance on November 17th, 2021. After the hearing and discussion by the Planning Commission, the Commission unanimously recommended the City Council not approve the ordinance attached to this memo or the minutes from the meeting on November 17th for the item MCPA 3-21. The minutes have been provided for the purpose of giving Council an understanding how the Planning Commission arrived at its decision. However, generally, the Planning Commission arrived at its decision to not recommend approval of the ordinance to Council due to the belief that there were other mechanisms the applicant or property owner could use to obtain the desired goal of developing the site as a mixed-use cottage cluster with housing and limited commercial opportunities. Specifically, the amended zoning, if approved, would allow commercial developments of up to 2,000 square feet outright, as opposed to the current zoning, which would require a conditional use permit. The Planning Commission arrived at its decision after hearing and reading public comments received before and during the public hearing. In the response to the applicant's narrative and comments at the public hearing, the staff and further information provided by staff. The 2018 housing needs analysis showed that there is a need for additional medium and high density residential zones, and that where appropriate, the city should consider zone changes to increase density requirements to ensure that there is sufficient buildable land to meet capacity and demand needs for new dwelling construction. The report also stated that increases in the minimum densities of the R2 and R3 zones would assist in getting the number of needed dwellings. In January of 2020, Council did adopt Ordinance 3120, which increased the minimum density in the R2 zone from 6 units per acre to 8, and in the R3 zone from 10 to 14. Additionally, Ordinance 3120 removed maximum densities from all residential zones, thereby allowing the maximum use of the land in the city's buildable inventory, providing that proposed developments met the appropriate criteria such as parking, building height, setbacks, etc. In the period of from the adoption of the 2018 housing needs analysis to present, 10.01 acres of land have been converted from low density residential and non-residential designations to either R2 or RC. It is now appropriate that Council consider the applicant's Type 4 legislative application to amend the comprehensive plan and land use district map. As this is a legislative application, Council may approve or deny the application as the criteria of Chapter 14.47 are subjective, and the decision to amend the comprehensive plan and land use district map are matters of policy. The following attachments are included for Council's consideration: draft ordinance, staff report from MCPA 3-21, the minutes from the November 17th public hearing. At the time of the public hearing, staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission was based on to approve was based on the application's compliance with statewide land use goals. The ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting and can be adopted in one meeting. I do want to add that there was a small error in the draft ordinance that was published last week with the sentence council ordains just below the header. That has been removed by staff. The recommendation after council deliberation, it is recommended that City Council hold the first vote on the attached correct ordinance.
Counselor Fleck.
So it's always a tough situation when you have neighbors come either before the city council or the planning commission. You know, this is something that I know and Dawn knows. Actually, we both served on the planning commission years ago. And so it is always very tough when you're looking at something that folks are not objective on. And we all understand that. This is your home, your castle, and you certainly don't want to have it impacted. The thing of it is, if this was a land use item, we would not be having this conversation at all. Land use in Oregon is supposed to be clear and objective, and city staff went through and looked through all of our ordinances and asked, did the applicant meet all of the standards in our code? They believed he did. I believe that he did. And so the problem is, and I think the Planning Commission hit the nail on the head, the RC zone, I think, is the question mark. There's R2 right across the street. That said, I run community sharing, and it is RC, as is that whole entire area RC. And so RC is in close proximity to the neighboring property, as are R2 properties. So this is a very difficult situation to look at. One thing I do know is, having known Mr. Norton for many years, is that he ran a bicycle trailer business out of that property for a number of years. So this property has been in a residential, commercial, quasi state in the past. And so I'm actually going to support this. I wasn't sure coming into the meeting how I would feel about it, because I do worry about the impact on neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, I changed a lot. The mayor in his State of the City address talked about changing over the years. we have a vacancy rate in Cottage Grove that is lower than 1% right now for rentals. This is something our agency does, is provide rent assistance to low-income people in our town, and it's desperate. It is absolutely desperate, and so I pushed out of my comfort zone and allowed us to change our code to allow smaller properties, to allow higher density, which is something, if you ask anybody who's known me for years, I have fought terribly. But if I'm going to be a good leader, I have to look at the needs of the community, and I have to be able to adapt. And I guess that's what I'm asking everybody here to do as well, is that we do need to do this. I believe that, as staff stated, that this is in line with what our code says and the intent of our building needs analysis. And so I will be supporting this.
Councilor Savage?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I think my confusion came when staff had recommended that this be adapted and the Planning Commission said no. That confused me. Why would the staff recommend that this go through and then Planning Commission say no? And so I asked this question in our agenda session on Friday, and it was just stated previously by Mr. Mongden, and to the best of my ability, I'll restate it, and that is the application received meets the criteria, and that makes sense. The proposed development can happen without changing the zoning. So my confusion is, why are we talking about rezoning if the development can still happen? So the development is not what we're voting on tonight, though. What we're voting on is a zone change. The development, I think, would be a really positive impact for our community. We need housing. We need it so desperately, and that can happen with the current zoning. And all we need is a conditional use permit, and that's my understanding. So I'm having a hard time justifying the zone change. Thank you.
And that's it. I support the concept, but I don't support the zone change because the Planning Commission voted unanimously to not change the zone, and I do not want to undermine the Planning Commission. That's why we have them there. And so for myself, we're not talking about the project, we're talking about the zone change. I will not support it. Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions pertain to the, without a zone change, the path to the style of work and or operations of commerce that would go on that property. Kind of where the lines are. You know, there was, even though the decision isn't based on what's going to happen there necessarily, it's a zone change, I understand that. But I'd like a little more information on, under the current zoning, what kind of business can be run out of that, it's all as it's currently zoned. And then I guess another point would be the conditional use process still is also opened up to public comment, is my understanding, in at least a couple of times. And can you speak to the weight of the public comment in the decision-making process of the conditional use application?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Irvin. So to point number one, and forgive me if I get off track. So as a conditional use in the current zone, which is R1, and I'm looking at table 1422-110 in the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, allowed commercial uses under a conditional use permit would be things like a tutoring center, let's see, office space, so, you know, H&R Block, something like that, under 2,000 square feet. General commercial retail sales and service, so that could be a nail salon, that could be a corner market, again, under that 2,000 square foot requirement. Those are just, you know, off the cuff examples of development types that would be permitted in the RC zone, excuse me. But again, I would add that they would all be subject to review by the Planning Commission again. So a site design review.
Just to be clear, you just said the RC zone. My question was pertaining to the current zoning.
Apologies. Yes. So with the R2 zone, or the R1, geez, I'm all over the place here. With the R1 zone, so I've listed some examples of commercial uses allowed in the R1 zone with a conditional use permit. That conditional use permit process requires a couple of different things. The applicant would need to send a notice to every neighbor within 300 feet and hold a neighborhood meeting as part of the pre-application process. The intent of that is to hear the concerns of the neighborhood based on a specific proposal. So in the case of Mr. Norton, if he's going to do this shared kind of incubator space, he would present drawings and ideas of hours of operation and things like that to that neighborhood meeting. Then apply for a conditional use permit. That's a $840 permit, type 3 application, quasi judicial to the Planning Commission. Staff would send out the same notices to the same 300-foot buffer around the subject properties. There would be a public hearing held where folks, neighbors can speak for, neutrally against. For conditional uses, the intent of the conditional use in our code is to lessen the impact of proposals on adjacent development, specifically light, noise, dust, odor, things like that. And so all of those things actually can be fairly subjective. It could be prohibitive to development if a case was made by neighbors, those speaking at the hearing, and potentially staff not being able to recommend approval because the proposed layout just, is too far off the mark from our code. And so like this application that for the plan amendment and zone change, it's conditional uses are subjective. Yes, they can meet criteria such as statewide land use goals or development pattern requirements for commercial developments. But at the same time, if there's perception of adverse impact to the neighborhood, they can be denied by the Planning Commission.
And so this point, if I may, about subjective versus objective, Councillor Fleck referred to this as an objective decision making, if I understood that correctly, though I don't know if he was talking about land use specific or what. So can you just quantify, is the decision we're making right now supposed to be objectively based on the criteria that in our code, or is there an element of subjectivity to it? And I think you sufficiently answered the question on the conditional use part. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would say that this actually is very much a policy-based decision. This is looking at, the glide path for the city, potentially, into the future, much as our comprehensive plan is a guiding document. This is a proposed amendment to that guiding document to change that. So yes, it does have to go through some testing, if you will, against the 19 statewide planning goals. Not all of those are applicable, coastal zones, things like that, et cetera. But it does need to go through that. Staff was, I believe, able to make findings sufficient to meet each one of those different planning goals that were relevant. But in the end, this is still just a policy decision, or simpler, in your words, subjective.
Councillor Fleck?
Oh, just to follow up. No, this is a subjective decision. If this was a true land use decision, it would not be. It'd be quasi-judicial, and we would have to. So we wouldn't be here if it was one of those, because clearly, all of the criteria the applicant, followed. And so I was just stating that that weighs heavy on me, having spent 4.5 years on the Planning Commission. And I certainly respect the concerns of others in this group, but I really feel that for myself, I need to stick with our code and the intent of it. And in this case, I believe the applicant met that intent.
Counselor Fleck.
So we haven't heard from everybody, so I will just float a motion, and if it dies, it dies. Do we have an ordinance number?
3154.
So, Mr. Mayor, I move that ordinance 3154 be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? More discussion. Counselor Irvin?
Yeah, and thank you for the time to ask or speak again. The first questions were just to answer a few things in my mind, and I guess I'd just give a primer to how I'm going to vote. And it does have to do with the zoning change or the code changes that we made to the sizes of lots and what was permitted on them. I'm trying to balance the preservation of the thing that makes Cottage Grove indesirable. And I listened to your concerns, Councilor Fleck, about those sizes, and I remember I was pushing against at the time, and I'm coming off of that a little bit. I'm going to vote no on the zone change, understanding that that wars a little bit against trying to do what you want to do on your property. But I do think that we have made some big changes relatively recently, and that relieves some of the pressure on the housing stock and the availability of adapting to that. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm going to vote no on it.
Any more comments? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
John.
Oh, hold on. Counselor Stennett.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm quite torn on this. Kind of understanding the need for housing in Cottage Grove, very acutely and personally, honestly. I certainly don't doubt Mr. Norton's intentions for the property and his good intentions for it and for the neighborhood. Reading the Planning Commission minutes, he had stated that he was kind of mostly seeking flexibility in what he was going to be able to do on the property. I don't doubt that he would have the best interests of the property and the community at heart with that flexibility, but I think the zone change is a little bigger than what he wants to do with it. I would tend, kind of being conflicted as I am, to defer to the expertise of the Planning Commission and to the concerns of the neighborhood, and I think I'll be voting no as well.
With that, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Soulsby?
Nay.
Counselor Savage?
Nay.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Stennett?
Nay.
Counselor Irvin?
Nay.
Counselor Roberts?
Nay.
Mayor Gowin?
Nay. Okay, item D is an ordinance amending the title 1-4 land use map for 4 properties on Highway 99. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. At the City Council meeting held on December 13th, 2021, Council adopted Ordinance number 3150, annexing 1.57 acres into the City of Cottage Grove. As a requirement of annexation per Section 18.04.090 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, the property owner is required to apply for a zone change of the subject properties to redesignate the zoning from county to city zoning. Per Section 14.47.400(1), the Planning Commission shall review and decide upon land use district map changes that do not involve comprehensive plan amendments through a Type 3 application procedure. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for Zone Change 1-21 on December 15th, 2021, voting 6-0 in favor of applying the comprehensive plan designation of C2P Community Commercial to the subject properties. As the Planning Commission does not have the ability to adopt an ordinance, Council is now being asked to ratify the Planning Commission's decision to approve ZC 1-21 by adopting the ordinance. This ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption. It is recommended that the City Council hold a vote on the attached ordinance. The ordinance was prepared and has been available for 1 week prior to this meeting. This ordinance could be adopted in one meeting.
Councillor Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, move that ordinance number 3155 be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Soulsby,
Aye.
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck,
Aye.
Counselor Stennett,
Aye.
Counselor Irvin,
Aye.
Counselor Roberts,
Aye.
Mayor Gowdy.
Aye. Okay, item 9 is business from the City Council. Item A is election of council president. Mr. Myers.
So every year we look at the council president, and there's an election to decide who to have as the council president. Currently, Councillor Fleck has served in the last year until the election's over, will be council president. And so it's up for the council to make that selection and pick a council president.
Councilor Roberts.
Mr. Mayor, I say we keep Mike Fleck. I nominate Mike Fleck to stay on as council president. Did a great job sitting in when needed. And I think his wisdom would be best in the seat.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Councilor Fleck.
So I've been kind of holding off. Thank you for this. I know the mayor announced his bid to run for House District 12, and I guess I should go ahead and announce that I plan to run for mayor later this year. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to serve in whenever Jeff is not here as hopefully some practice for an outcome that obviously is yet to be determined. So I really appreciate your support and look forward to doing that.
Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. I'd like to say that working you outside of this room, I've gotten to get to know you better. And I want to thank you for your help making me a better council.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item B is City Council Subcommittee and Liaison appointments. Mr. Myers.
So also at the start of the new year, we get to look at the liaison appointments and different committee assignments. You have a list attached to your memo. There's one change on it. The Lane Regional Air Protection Agency is listed as Greg Irvin, and the Lane Workforce Partnership Council is listed as Mike Fleck. Those would be switched back to what they are currently and remain that way, and we'll see what happens during the year. There may be a change. But you have those appointments. When you make the appointments, the council, the only one that needs to be adopted specifically by the council are the vision keeper appointments. The two candidates on there, Councillor Roberts and Councillor Savage. The other appointments can be approved together.
Councillor Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the City Council adopt your proposed subcommittee appointments.
Second.
And do we need to specify on
The vision keepers.
vision keepers?
Oh, with the vision keepers being represented by Councilor Roberts and Councilor Savage.
And that would be a separate motion and vote. Yeah. Need a second on that.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, item C is Planning Commission appointments. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Irvin, would you like to present the recommendation of the subcommittee, or would you like me to do it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mongan. I'd be happy to. The subcommittee interviewing the applicants met recently, and we conducted the interviews. Just want to say thank you to everybody that applied. We appreciate having more applicants than we have positions. That's a great place to be. I would encourage Mr. Rust to continue to reapply. With that, we recommend as the subcommittee to appoint Tim Burns, Ashley Regal, and David Christopher to 3-year terms beginning January 1st, 2022 and expiring December 31st, 2024.
Second.
Have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Item D is homelessness work session. Mr. Myers.
So we've had a previous meeting at the last city council meeting. We discussed homelessness in Cottage Grove and had quite a discussion on that. We are putting together a package considering all the information we received from the council, the information we've received in the community, and would like to present that in a work session. And we're looking at January 31st. It is the 5th Monday, so there's no council meeting that night, from 6 to 8 o'clock. We're hoping that we have 2 hours, and maybe we take 3, but starting at 6 to go over those options and the package, and so we can then take some kind of action at the meeting in February.
Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, will the city attorney be at that?
She is scheduled to be here on the 31st, if that works for all of the council.
Okay. Works with me.
I've seen a thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. Councilor Stannett, you good with that day? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
It's hard to see a little box in there. Okay, so it looks like that's our date.
Is that 5:30, you said? Or 5?
6 to 8.
6 to 8.
Yeah.
Okay, so item E is parking analysis downtown. Mr. Laird.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Matt Laird, your new assistant planner here at the City of Cottage Grove. I'm here tonight to present the findings of the downtown parking analysis. In the summers of 2020 and 2021, planning staff conducted parking counts on a 19-block area of downtown. These car counts were conducted in the morning, lunchtime, afternoon, and evening. The first parking count was conducted between June 25th and July 1st of 2020. The second was conducted between July 30th and August 5th, 2020, and the third was conducted between April 5th and April 11th, 2021. There are 363 parking spaces within the public right-of-way in the study area and another 131 spaces in the 5 public parking lots for a total of 494 public parking spaces. There are an additional 340 private parking spaces that were not included in the study. Downtown Cottage Grove generally has 6 types of parking ordinances in place, with the majority being 2-hour parking allowed in the right-of-way and 3-hour parking allowed in the public parking lots. The standard that is typically used by planners and transportation researchers for evaluating parking is between 80 to 85% occupancy. We can assume that any percentage more than 85% means that there's a lack of parking in downtown Cottage Grove, while less than 80% occupancy means parking is largely available. So to answer the main question, does the downtown area have enough parking? The data gathered indicates that downtown Cottage Grove does have enough parking, even at peak times. The busiest curbs in the study area only reach an occupancy rate between 60 and 70% on average. The parking data gathered shows that the biggest driver of parking occupancy is food and restaurant related. The 3 most occupied areas of parking are next to Jack Sprat's, Coast Fork Brewing, and in the evening, El Tapatio. There were also 2 outliers, the public parking lot next to City Hall and the single space in front of Les Schwab. These are occupied at higher rates, most likely due to employee parking. It is worth noting that the parking counts were conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic and may be lower than what was previously considered normal. However, even adjusting for an extreme 68% increase, the parking occupancy still falls short of the 80% standard. The parking analysis also did not include counts during an event at the Armory. Future parking counts may need to be conducted to determine the impacts that temporary large events have on parking in the downtown area. Based on the data gathered, it can be concluded that parking in downtown Cottage Grove is below the 80 to 85% occupancy standard typically used. A verified parking occupancy during the parking study averaged 42%, meaning that out of the 494 public parking spaces, 286 spaces were available. This data shows that typically there is public parking available in the downtown area. This analysis also does not include the additional 340 private parking spaces that may also be available. In 2015, Cottage Grove City Council adopted the Main Street Refinement Plan that identified that deteriorating conditions of some of the streets and sidewalks may negatively influence people's perceptions regarding parking downtown. Also identified in the refinement plan was the fact that much of the study area is not fully compliant with ADA federal standards. According to the National Association of City Transportation Officials, pedestrian safety and comfort can be increased with high visibility markings and accessible curb ramps. The parking study data also showed that the public parking lots are often underutilized. This may be due to visitors not knowing their locations and some citizens feeling unsafe using them. It is also recommended that employees try and use the public parking lots as much as possible to free up spaces near business entrances. In order to address these findings, City Public Works and Development staff will continue to implement the following actions as opportunities become available. 1, moving forward with implementation of the Main Street Refinement Plan. 2, prioritize sidewalk and ADA improvements. 3, prioritize pedestrian safety and comfort by restriping cross streets along Main Street. 4, improve wayfinding signage to the public parking lots. 5, refurbish public parking lots with better lighting and possibly security cameras. And 6, work with business owners to encourage the use of public parking by employees. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Councilor Fleck.
So I really appreciate staff doing this. It puts in very graphical form what I think I've sensed for quite some time, that there certainly is a lot of parking overall, but I just want to reiterate some of the comments I made at our agenda session, is that if you look at, Main Street between 5th and 7th, and you look at 6th Street between Main and Washington, there's some areas that are very, very busy. And like I mentioned on Friday, the perception is different. People will walk from the far side of Walmart into the store and probably walk twice as far as they would if they parked 2 blocks away downtown. But the perception is different. And I believe that we will lose people in those businesses because of that perception. And I was just sitting here as we were talking about the grant earlier, and if I remember right, the Main Street Refinement Plan also talks about bulb outs on the ends of Bow Street, which is going to remove 2 more parking spaces on top of the spots that we've already lost now from our streeteries. So I guess I would just urge real caution about losing any more parking spaces in those areas. And then finally, I guess I also look at the Armory as a potential venue, being the largest area in town. And I do think if folks are wearing, fancy dresses and suits, walking a long distance, to events at the Armory is definitely a negative. And I really would encourage us to try to seek more parking over on that side of town. Thank you.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also going to reiterate the comments that I made at Friday's agenda session. I work downtown and am down there constantly, and I really appreciate the visuals that are given. As Mr. Fleck said, this is what we already knew, but this makes it very well easy to read, very well read. The concerns that I have would be folks that park downtown and stay longer than the 2 hours, than the 3 hours. I have seen cars stay down there and parked in the same spot for 5 days, and there's zero enforcement. This is left to business owners and tenants to call in and have them enforced, which is done and handled appropriately. Every time somebody is called, it's handled right away. But it doesn't feel good to feel like you have to say something every single time. And to have tenants say it's cheaper to pay a $20 ticket than it is, you know, and I can have my car right out there all the time, and every 6 months I get a ticket, it's worth it to them to park down there all the time. And so I really encourage enforcement on this as well. If people start getting tickets, they will park there appropriately, and I think these numbers will also get better. The other thing that I wanted to say is there are 2 parking lots over by El Tapatio. I believe the city owns them. And I don't think that they're striped well, and they're also not welcoming. I think that you touch bases on this in your report. They're not very well lit. It just doesn't feel good to park there. And I think with better lighting and resurfacing, these will get utilized more and more often. I personally love parking far away from my office because then I get to visit with everybody that I see on the street, because I happen to know so many folks, and it's wonderful to just visit with everybody that I walk by and call them out by name and give a smile and shout a wave and wave at people walking across the street or in their cars. So I love the walk and I enjoy it, and I encourage more people to do it. Thank you.
Very nice. Councilor Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since I live downtown, I would like to possibly see, I mean, I love this. The members on this are wonderful. But I would love to see some way where some type of program or way to make it so that people that live downtown have an easier way to park closer to where they live without punishment, in my words. But that's just me. I think there's plenty of parking. I don't have a problem finding a place to park in front of my building or around my building. I do agree with Councilor Savage. I think our city lots, I feel for them to be used more regularly by people. They need to be better lit and better taken care of. The one behind mine, I know we did do some more lighting on it, but the amount of garbage and they just look wrong. And I think, when our tourism people come here and the first impression they get when they get out of the car is not a good one with that. And Mike brought up the armory. When we do get through COVID, I don't know when that's going to happen. If the armory ever becomes what it can be, will we have the proper parking for a big event there? I mean, I don't know, Richard, what is the capacity of the armory?
When it's completely finished, you could probably, and we haven't done the numbers, and we haven't had the fire marshal look at it, the calculations on it and everything, but I think it's somewhere probably around 700.
Okay. And I know it was not in the plan due to COVID. So, I mean, that's something to think of. Where these people, I'm with you, especially if it's an event that's in the fall or winter, would you want to walk 3-4 blocks? That's going to be something to deal with. Anyway, that's all I have. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Irvin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try not to reiterate the points I agree with what I just heard too much, but I would like to just emphasize the perception issue. Going to dinner, it rains here a lot, obviously. Going to dinner at Stacy's or something, you step out into a puddle. That even if you live here and you like the place, it kind of makes you have a different view of it for a moment. And that's paired with lighting. Better lighting, you would see the puddle hopefully before you stepped in it. But the fact that there was a puddle, and that's the one right across from the city. The other ones at least it's my perception, there's a lot of gravel in them. It's enough to keep me out of them in general if I don't want to risk popping a tire. Just also part of the perception of stuff that goes on downtown when there's junk being thrown around. It's like, who knows what you're going to find in there, paired with what you see when you walk by that park fairly often. So there's a few perception issues. Nicely paved and marked parking lots that are well lit, sure, put a camera up, that's great too. That actually addresses part of that concern of like what happens when I can't see the vehicle from the restaurant where I'm sitting at. Those are things you just kind of desire and expect out of downtown areas far different than supermarket or a grocery store. We're not quite hitting those things. This test or this assessment couldn't have happened at a worse time. I mean, and to me, I don't know how to gauge the projected, numbers saying that they wouldn't even gotten to 80. I know that even in small events at the Armory, you're quite a ways away, and there isn't very good lighting, and the sidewalks are junk. So you're gonna stumble, you're gonna scuff your shoes, something. It's just like we need a decent parking area. We need like something like next to the Holt Center on a smaller scale, to where you can have bigger events. You can attract people downtown. Something possibly you could see from anywhere you walk downtown. That's well designed. I think we're going to continue to grow in Cottage Grove, and I think we have an opportunity to preserving the neighborhoods, but having a culturally respecting nice cultural hub is something possible, and getting people down there and having them feel comfortable from the time they drive through looking for a parking space or looking for somewhere, window shopping on the drive-by. That's when you capture a ton of business that otherwise might just loop on out and keep going, or head off to the wineries, if they're going out that way. And I think we miss a lot of traffic. I think we miss a lot of opportunity by just the drive-by perception. And so I thank you for the study. I think it's an element to consider, but I think more important thing to consider is who we're trying to be. Thanks.
Anyone else? And I'd like to say, I walk around town a lot, and going by the city lot that's next to Umpqua Bank's parking lot, I find that very few times that there's many cars in there, if any. And I live 5 blocks from the Armory, and most of the events I walk to the Armory. I'm not going to start my car for 5 blocks. It's kind of a waste on my car. So I walk. It's not that hard. But thanks for the study. I appreciate it. Okay, item F is municipal judge contract review and amendments. Mr. Myers.
The municipal court judge's contract expired on December 31st. You've held your evaluation. You had his report of court in September. And as a result of the performance evaluation that you did, the judge has submitted a memo to all the council asking for an increase in the 2022 contract. His last increase was in 2017, and his current salary or compensation on the contract is $2,100 a month. He's asking for it to go up to $2,500 a month, and increase that starting January 1 of 22. So there is a contract amendment prepared and attached to the memo that has that in it, and also extends the contract for another year through December 31st of 2022 for your consideration.
Councilor Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, move that the council approve the renewal and amendments to the municipal court judge contract and authorize the mayor to sign the contract amendments.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thank you. Item G is a bid award for community center roof repairs. Mr. Sisson.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. As you know, the community center roof has been leaking badly the last couple of years, and even though we repatched it last fall, and we were able to limp through until last weekend's rains, so it started to leak again. And so this memo is related to proposed bid award for the community center roof repairs. The city advertised a request for bids beginning December 7th, 2021, extending through January 6th, 2022, and bids were opened at 2 p.m. Thursday, January 6th, 2022. City received 2 bids, one from Richards Remodeling LLC in the amount of $781,328. Tongue-tied. Umpqua Roofing submitted a bid in the amount of $782,340. Staff determined that the apparent low bidder, Richards Remodeling LLC, is fully qualified to submit and bid for this project. The contractor will be required to be substantially complete by Friday, September 30th, 2022. Staff recommends that City Council award by motion the Community Center roof repairs project to the qualified bidder, Richards Remodeling LLC, in the amount of $781,328, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract and confirm all associated documents subject to the expiration of the protest period or resolution of any timely filed protests. City Manager Richard Myers may have some comments on funding this project. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor and councilors.
Ms. Myers?
This is considerably higher than what we had budgeted. So in order to do this project, we have to do it. I mean, it's one of those that unless you want the community center to be always a waterfall and stuff, we've done a lot of improvements in the building over the last year. So what we would be doing is we'd be going out and getting a loan to pay for the construction costs above what we have, or for the total amount for what we need for this project.
Councilor Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, move that the City Council award the Community Center roof repairs project to qualified bidder Richards Remodeling LLC in the amount of $781,328, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract and confirm all associated documents subject to the expiration of the protest period or resolution of any timely filed protests.
Second.
I have a motion with the second. Is there any discussion? Councilor Roberts?
Richard, this roof, when done, how many years would this roof last?
We are getting the roof with a 30-year warranty.
Okay.
So it's an extra strong, it's the best you can get for that kind of roof.
Okay. And that was my next question. There is a warranty on it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Soulsby?
Those bids were very close. How did you guys come to the decision for one contractor over the other?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Soulsby. What we do is look for the low apparent bidder first. And then we look at whether the contractor submitted all the materials that they're required to submit, like the signed addenda that were issued during the bidding period, answering questions from contractors. Those forms prove that they paid attention and they understand that there were questions and or issues that we resolved during the bidding period. There's also responsibilities on the contractors to submit their first-tier contractor form, which shows each of the subcontractors that they'll be using. And some other forms that, as well as a responsibility determination form, it's found in ORS 279C, that I use typically to assess whether a contractor is suitable. Do they have dings against them, complaints and or rulings or judgments against them by the contractors board against their license? Richards Remodeling has a good record. A perfect record. And so Richards Remodeling was the one contractor out of the two that submitted everything that they were supposed to. They're also supposed to submit their pre-qualification form. Are they pre-qualified by either the city of Cottage Grove or ODOT for roof repairs, being in this field? And they are pre-approved by ODOT. So they submitted those forms as well. So they checked all of the boxes for being a responsible bidder, and they passed the analysis. Therefore, that's how I arrived at my recommendation.
Council Soulsby.
Thank you, Mr. Sisson. My concern was just in the name, remodeling, and I wanted to make sure that they actually were roofers. So, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. That made me spend special attention on this analysis for that very reason.
Any other comments or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Okay. Item H is Vision Keepers Committee Interview Subcommittee. Mr. Myers.
So we have some vacancies on the Vision Keepers Committee. We have the 2 at-large positions, and we'd like to have a council committee appointed to do those interviews, as their date for turning in submissions for applications is January 14th.
Are we allowed to be on that committee if we're on Vision Keepers? Is that?
I was thinking that the 2 representatives ought to be the two of the 3 on there.
Okay.
That works for me too.
Does anyone want to be a third? If not, I will do it. I'll do it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You need a chair?
It'd be nice.
Yeah.
Councilor Savage?
Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, concerns of council. Councilor Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, I noticed over there where they put the new Verizon in along Main Street that they have dug out a chunk of Main Street to put infrastructure into the building. Is that the final patch they're going to put on that, or is that going to be redone when it's all done?
Yes, it'll be redone.
Okay, because that's quite a strut buster. Yeah.
That's just a temporary, and in case they need to get back in when they make connections and something doesn't work right, it's temporary until that point, and then they have to make it final before they finish. Yeah.
Excellent. That's good news. Also, since we did the vote tonight, I recommend everybody to reread this just in case we get that $5 million. I haven't looked at this in a couple of years, and it was quite educational to get in. I mean, even Mike tonight brought up a couple things about the bump outs and other things that you might not remember that is there. Because from what I understand, we're only going to get a portion of what it would take to do this whole thing. And we're going to have to decide what's best for Main Street and our businesses down in Main Street. I do have a piece of good news for you all. I don't know if you've heard this, but as a member of the Cottage Grove Carousel Board of Directors, we finally have paid off the carousel. We own it now. I'm hoping with a program like this and the carousel, I would love to see somehow the city working with us to get the carousel somewhere close to downtown. I think the carousel, if you look at the business model of the ones in here in the state of Oregon, would be great economic development for our downtown businesses, for our restaurants, local shops. As you know, just what we went through, we do have the parking for it. But I would love to see the possibility of that. So to maybe help you along with that, I am personally inviting everybody in this room to please come to the open house this Saturday, the 15th, out at King Estate Winery, the warehouse out in the industrial park, and take a ride. Come down and take a ride and check it out. These people, I'm the newest member of that board. I really don't deserve any credit. But people like Russ McGuire and the people that have really have put some sweat equity into this thing. Judy Cash would be just loving right now what if she was here. But the carousel is a wonderful piece. And I think that getting it in downtown, I think is the only way for it to truly sustain too. Some of the other ideas of where they want to put it, I don't think will work. But I'd like to see that. And I'm looking really forward to working with city staff and this council on the homeless issue. I have enjoyed very much helping Mike and his crew. He has put together an amazing crew out there at the warming shelters. I've been doing calls to action on my radio show. I've been getting lots of donations. For some of you know and some of you don't know my story of being homeless for a while before I came here to Cottage Grove. And I go through a lot of flashback memories, and I really enjoy helping. You got a really great program, and I want to thank the city too for making that happen. So that is it, and I'm looking forward to this conversation because basically, as I have been saying for 3 years now, the program I went through that changed me into who I am today is looking like where we might be heading with this possible thing, a possibility of getting someone to actually run a full, putting basically all our eggs in one basket. And I think that is just wonderful. And I applaud Richard for getting to that point. Because I think that's the only way to do it, is to put all your eggs in one basket. The program I went through, everything was under one roof. Anything I needed, any question I asked, whether it was counseling, job training, it was all there, and they worked with me all the way through it. And it's great. So I think that this town can, if it wants, be really bold and create a program that might be duplicated throughout the rest of the state. I think that's great. So, Richard, thank you for all that, because I know you've been putting time into this since the roundtable discussions. What's it been, 3 years? Something like that. So I'm looking forward to helping. And anytime I can tell my story on how that kind of a program can work, I will do so to help it here in town. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Councilor Fleck?
Yeah, and I thank you for bringing that up, Councilor Roberts. I definitely should have mentioned, we activated the warming shelter for 8 days in a row, from Christmas Eve through New Year's. And we could not have done it without folks. I'm seeing Bruce Kelsh's online here, Councilor Roberts, the folks who stepped up to help, our staff. The staff did a great job. We were pretty lean. As you can imagine, getting people to sign up to work on a holiday is kind of a challenge. And we kept it going even when people started getting sick. I did get tested. It was not COVID, actually, which is kind of surprising in this environment, but no. And then, Councilor Roberts and Bruce and others picked up when I got sick and could not be down there. So I just want to be, and of course, the biggest thing is city staff.
Yeah.
The city staff were filling the propane tanks, were fixing the place when the wind blew the canopies out of the fence. And, the city staff have just been tremendous support. They're there, rain or shine. I mean, that's something we don't think about, is the public work guys are out there, when it's just ugly and nasty, and they're supporting us. And so I just really want to commend the mayor for his State of the City address, because it's really just, hits the nail on the head. Our staff are just absolutely dedicated to this community, and as are the folks who stepped up to help in this. So thank you so much to all of them.
And we even had a Christmas tree.
And we had a Christmas tree.
Anyone else? Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. The last city council meeting, I brought up an email that I received about an issue on Kalapuya Way with traffic and speeding. And I want to express thanks and gratitude to Chief Shepherd, who returned back to that email and was able to get some speed signs up, the kind that flash when you're driving too fast. The cart is too large for that road, but there was another option available, and I appreciated him thinking outside the box. This prompted the gentleman who wrote the original email to come back with another question, because he got a response that he appreciated, and we were able to turn that around. Thank you, Mr. Myers and Chief Shepherd, for helping with the parking issue that they're experiencing on Kalapuya Way. I really appreciated the speed of response that we were able to get back to this resident, and I think he appreciated it as well. I also wanted to encourage Don Norton to continue down his path. This does not mean no to his project, so I really want to clarify this is the vote that we did tonight was about the zone change. It was not a personal no against the project. So I think a lot of folks are in support of this project. So I'd like to express that. And the last thing that I'd like to say, it's been mentioned a couple different times, we are now going into an election year. And I really encourage everybody to reach out to your local folks who are running in these elections, in our local elections and in the state elections. I think having one-on-ones and getting to know the people who are running is so incredible. And just sit down, have a cup of coffee. A lot of folks are meeting local residents one-on-one and in small groups, and it's already started and it's happening. And I think this is how we're going to come together and unite. We don't have to be divided. It's not necessarily political. Get to know the people who are running, because there's some major players that are coming down the pipeline, and I really want to encourage folks to get to know them. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Irvin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the address, and best of luck on your running in that position. We need good representation at all the levels. I have a couple of, I guess, questions and follow-ups. Pertaining to the council rules, we've talked about this a couple of times. Do we have that scheduled, that work group? If not, maybe can we get that scheduled? Because every time we don't allow someone to speak, that just like to revisit that. Also wanted to follow up. Mr. Bradsby was kind of leading a lot of the Taylor sidewalk rebuilding. So an update on that. Who's handling that? I did see a response to an email today about the skate park surveys that were undertaken by an intern, I believe, and it sounds like we might have an update on that next council meeting. Would like to know what the roadmap is, what's needed to drive things forward. Is you need a champion of the cause? And are we looking at anything realistically happening or what? Would that be for 2022? Because if it is, spring's going to be here before we know it, and we'd have to be doing something pretty soon. And I guess I'm volunteering for anything to drive that forward. And I'm hesitant to mention it, but it comes up enough. There seems to be a fair amount of property theft going on. I know in my neighborhood, I don't know how bad it is because it seems like a lot of people don't only talk about it amongst friends, but I'll say there's, it's pretty unnerving when your kids' bikes get stolen out of your yard, and in a pretty good neighborhood with people watching, and I guess I'd like to see a little more accountability on parents of kids who are involved in theft and other things that destroy this nice little culture we have, and open to discuss that as well and have ideas around that. But just hope that we look after and preserve a good neighborhood knit culture around here. Thanks.
Anyone else? I'd just like to, just say I am blessed to have the best council to work with, really, in the state. I'm, as most of you know, I'm the president of the Oregon Mayors Association this year, and so I get to brag about you guys a lot because I don't have the trouble that a lot of other cities have, and we got a phenomenal staff. So it is a pleasure to be sitting up here representing you guys. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Business from the city manager. Item A is Home Share Oregon presentation.
We have with us, who sat through the whole meeting, we appreciate that, Judy Smith, who is the Lane County rep for Home Share. And we're going to try. I'll run the slides if you tell me when to change.
All right, well, let's sit here on this one for a second. So thank you, Council, for letting me come. I told Teresa Gowan that I would actually like to sit in on the City Council meeting for a while so I can get a feel for your community. And what I'm impressed with is the way you guys pull together to make stuff happen. So good for you. I am fairly new to Homeshare, Oregon, and that's probably because Homeshare, Oregon is fairly new. We've only been around for a couple of years, originally under the umbrella of Harbor of Hope, which is a nonprofit in Portland, although we did achieve our own nonprofit status of 501c3 in June of last year. Homeshare, Oregon started with a question: what can we do to provide affordable housing for Oregonians? And as any question, the people involved in that process, I was not one of them, but they started doing some research and they found out that home sharing is working in different parts of our country, not countrywide, but in different communities. And so the next question became, will home sharing work in Oregon? And that's what we're going to explore. The next slide, please.
Let's see if I can do it.
Sure.
There we go.
There you go. Thank you. So we have a housing crisis, or if it's not a crisis, it's certainly a challenge. I heard you say tonight that you have a 1% availability rate in your community for housing right now. That's pretty average. There was a report that came out of Oregon Live the end of December. It was, well, not a report, it was more of an article, but it stated that there are 45,000 homes in danger of foreclosure because their owners are behind in their mortgage payments. That's a challenge. Here in Lane County, the average annual income is about 26 grand a year. If you're following the HUD recommendations of only spending 30% of your income on housing, and most of us spend more, but if you were to do that, that gives you a budget of about $652 a month. Now, granted, that's average income for one person, and most households have more than one income, but not all. And so when you look at a monthly budget for rent of $652 and the average cost of a two-bedroom apartment in Lane County being almost $1,400, that's quite a gap. And that is definitely a challenge. Next slide. So, will home sharing be an option? You know, after the Oregon census came out, we looked at it and did the math and figured out that there's about 1.5 million empty spare rooms in Oregon. They're already built, taxes are being paid, and if you look at it as underused housing, there's some great potential there. If we fill just 2% of those rooms, we can house 30,000 people. And that's 30,000 homeowners that have a little more financial resiliency as well. And potentially opening up apartments for 30,000 people who don't find home sharing to their liking. So why is it a solution? Well, it's mutually beneficial. It gives the middle class the tools that they need, or at least we're giving them the tools that they need to get that financial resilience. It benefits a homeowner because they get income. It benefits the person they're sharing their home with, the renter or housemate, if you will. It'll give them an affordable place to live because home sharing is generally half the cost of renting an apartment. It's flexible, it's affordable, and the way we do it, it's efficient and kind of independent. Actually, when my grandparents were young, they called it taking in a boarder. A lot of people did it. That's how you got by, and that's how people found housing. So we believe it's tried and true, but we've got some technology on our side. Next slide. How does it work? Well, you visit our website, homeshareoregon.org. That's for homeowners and renters, and you sign up with us. And then we send you an email, and that's pretty important because that email gives you a link that identifies you as a HomeShare Oregon participant, and it gives you a 6-month membership with a for-profit company called Silvernest. You could go directly to Silvernest and pay the money every month to help you find your housemate, your roommate, but if you sign up with us, we're paying for it because our goal is to help homeowners find secure, compatible people to live with, and Silver Nest has the ability to do that. Then what happens? You go online, you build your profile. Homeowners build a profile, including some photos maybe of the space they have. Renters build a profile, and it's based on compatibility. I like to tell people that Silver Nest is kind of a cross between an Airbnb and a dating app, because it is based on compatibility. And if you communicate through the Silver Nest platform, you don't share your personal information until you're ready, until you find someone that you think they might be a good fit. So what do? You go online after you've signed up. As soon as you've made your profile, you can start viewing matches, either, as a homeowner looking for a renter or vice versa. And you start a conversation through the app. Again, it's like a messaging app online. And once you've found the right fit, then you really get going on it. Next slide, please. We have some best practices in place. We tell people when you're building your profile, be honest, be descriptive, be direct, and be you, because we want it to be compatible. We want it to be right. And if you're the homeowner, putting some pictures up of the place that you have for rent, and maybe yourself with or without a face mask. When you're looking for that right fit, we tell you, be inquisitive. Ask the questions that are about things that are important to you. If it's important to you that the person you're living with have a COVID vaccine, you should probably bring it up. I don't know, there's other things you can talk about. I mean, golly, if you are allergic to fragrance, you certainly don't want a housemate who's into aromatherapy. So if it's important to you, it's something to talk about to see if it's the right fit. We encourage you to meet the person in person. Silver Nest has some other tools available. There's a criminal background check, which, by the way, we pay for. So you can make sure that person is who they say they are. Now, those aren't infallible. They only go about 5-6 years. So maybe you should get some references and be sure you check them out. Silver Nest also has a template for a rental agreement between the two parties. It's customizable, totally customizable between the two people. Again, this is giving the tools to the people it matters most to. There's no organization telling you exactly how to do it, although we're there to support you. And then in terms of safety and security, well, we want people to be secure. So use the tools that I've talked about. Don't be afraid to ask those tough questions, and you shouldn't be in a hurry. You should take your time to find the right match. Next slide, please. Who can do it? Well, just about anybody who has a spare room. It works for all ages, all demographics. It's kind of especially nice for our senior citizens. AARP came out with a report recently talking about the health of seniors who are isolated and living alone. Their health it just doesn't go well for them. And so, having an extra person in your house if you're older and alone, that can be a very positive impact. Empty nesters, if you've got a spare room, maybe you don't need the income. The income's nice, but maybe you're fine financially. But hey, you might have more money to put down on your retirement, or I don't know, your trip to Tahiti, whatever you would like to do with that money. Some of our older folks will offer lower rent to people if they'll do chores around the house. Again, it's all negotiable between the parties. So, next slide. We have a few other irons in the fire. We received a grant from the state of Oregon to work with fire survivors. So that's what funded my position and my colleague Ivy down in Jackson County, because there are still people that are living in hotels because of the fires here in Lane County. There's still 200 households living in hotels, and we're trying to help them find matches if that is a good fit for them. We're also going to be building a rapid responder list. This is a proactive thing where maybe homeowners have a spare room. They really don't want to rent it out, but they might be willing to take someone into their home for a short period of time in case of a natural disaster. So we'll be working with some of the organizations that work with disasters, and we're hoping to get that off the ground in March. And then, of course, like most nonprofits, we love volunteers. We're calling them our Home Share Oregon Action Team, and we're defining what those roles could be. But those are some other things we're working on. Slide, please. So is it working in Oregon? Well, it's starting to. In the 2021, we had over 10,000 folks either go to our website, call us, or email us for more information. We've had 316 homeowners list their spare bedrooms for rent. And that decreases the need for 300 plus apartments. We have had no problem getting potential renters to sign up. Right now, the ratio is about 4 to 1. So my big push right now is really recruiting homeowners. And I'm talking to Teresa about how we might do that here in Cottage Grove. And I think I already mentioned the grant that we got from the state of Oregon. But starting in November, we started asking homeowners who sign up with us if they would be willing to consider a fire survivor, and we've already had 32 people sign up, so that's a nice start as well. And we have almost 60 volunteers. So again, we're new, we're young, but this is a great idea that is going to work for some people. If we can get more homeowners, again, not have any problem getting renters to sign up, but homeowners, that's been a challenge. Next slide. Can't do it without you. I challenge you, consider home sharing. If not for you, maybe somebody you know. So help us spread the word. Consider joining the Home Share Action Team. Sounds like most of you are volunteering up to your eyebrows already, but you know, might be a good fit for you. Sign up to receive our newsletter. That's easy enough. Go to our website. It comes out about once a month, and you'd get some good information there. And I just can't reiterate it enough. I want to connect in the community of Cottage Grove. I am assured now, especially since I heard that percentage of 1% occupancy rate. I'll talk to your church, your community clubs, your friends, your family. I will talk to just about anybody. I have no problem making cold calls, but if you help open the door so that I can talk to people in your community and see if we can recruit some homeowners and find affordable housing for the people that here that need it, that would be wonderful. So I always like to document. I threw some statistics at you. Our slideshow, you know, has where all those statistics came from. If you want that information, I can certainly get that in a document form or an email, at least, if you want to look at some of that information yourself. But that's really all I have to say. I'm willing to answer questions if you have them.
Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this presentation. I love innovation when it comes to this kind of stuff. A couple of thoughts come up. Homelessness is definitely one of the things that's in our face and needs innovative solutions. I'm wondering if there's an approach to this that you guys have considered with facilitating getting homeless in homes and addressing the concerns that homeowners might have with that regard. And the other thing I was reminded of is early on in this meeting, seems like a long time ago, we were discussing that zone change application. Some of those letters referred to the number of vacant homes around Cottage Grove. And this just struck me as a potential opportunity to get in contact with the owners of vacant properties and maybe work up a solution for either renovation or rehab, taking care of them in a way that it's habitable, that could end up making them money, or at least pay their property taxes or something like that, or pay back property tax. I don't know what the deal is with these places, but that, when you've got empty space that doesn't require somebody having to mesh their lives together, that seems even like a different barrier to entry. So thank you for the presentation.
Well, to respond to that comment about the unhoused, that's not our target. There are organizations that have gotten some extra money because of COVID, and they're working diligently in our area to provide support and case management and to help the unhoused. Doesn't mean an unhoused person couldn't apply, but that's not our target. Our target is people that are working but can't afford $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month for an apartment, but they could afford $800 a month. So, we're looking at the middle class and helping them provide homeowners, again, with that financial resiliency, being able to make their mortgage payment or invest in their retirement or whatever it is they want to do with the money they make, but to provide housing that's already there for people that are secure and people that are compatible, and make it affordable. So it really, our focus is not the unhoused. It's definitely, I know that that's an issue in almost every community I talk to. It is becoming an urgent issue, and I encourage you guys to continue to your efforts to deal with that. But if you think about it, home sharing is a way to prevent someone from becoming unhoused in the first place. And in terms of your housing that's empty, I can't speak to that. I do have one woman who owns 2 houses, and she's setting one up to have as a home share, but it's still, she has to, check in and out with that to make sure that her home and her property is being, it's different if you're not in your home. It's more like a rental as opposed to home share. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the answer. I would push back slightly. A lot of the testimony we've been hearing is that a lot of the homeless, even in our, or a portion of the homeless in our community, have steady income but still can't afford income. At least what was spoken about would be more than enough to pay for the rents that you're talking about. So maybe there is something there.
Well,
potentially as well.
there's definitely opportunity. We don't tell someone they can't apply and join, home share. It's just we can't guarantee housing either because it's based on compatibility and it is negotiated between people, the homeowner and the potential renter. I would think that someone like Councilor Roberts, who has been unhoused, would probably be open to talking to someone who is currently unhoused. But someone who has not had that experience, it might be more of a challenge. My role as the area representative, and actually not just Lane County, but I'm taking care of the northern part of the state, is to help remove those barriers that are keeping people from going and doing home sharing in the first place. And one of the biggest issues is, will my home be secure? Will I be secure if I open my home to a stranger? And our point is get to know the stranger and see if it'll work.
Councilor Fleck.
So you mentioned contracts.
Mm-hmm.
What does a typical contract looks like? Let's say somebody moves in, 2 weeks later, you're like, oh yeah, this is not working.
Well, that's a really good question. I should have mentioned that, Councilor Fleck. These agreements are vetted by lawyers. The ones being used in Oregon have been vetted by Oregon lawyers. They include a clause that says if this arrangement isn't working for either party, that they can dissolve it with a 30-day notice. It's signed on DocuSign, so it becomes a legal document between the two of them. What does it look like? That depends on the individual. My supervisor, Tess Fields, had an accident in her home a year ago, December, fell and broke both of her legs. She'd just gone through a divorce. She was currently living alone, and her house could not accommodate a wheelchair. So she signed up for home sharing. She was the only employee at home share at that point because we were really new back then. And she found a young woman who was a student at Portland State who had just lost her job as a waitress because the restaurant had closed. They negotiated a very low rent in exchange for her doing chores. And Tess actually put exactly what had to happen to earn that rent into that agreement. It is negotiated between both parties, and it reflects what they both want, and they both sign it, and it becomes a legal document. But again, there is that clause that says you can dissolve that relationship if it's not working for any reason. It's a good question.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. This is an amazing presentation. What a lovely venture this is. A little personal testimony. Back in 2011, I was 6 months pregnant with our youngest daughter, and my husband, we were living up in Salem, my husband got a job at U of O and immediately moved to Eugene to work in Eugene, yet I remained in Salem because I'm huge, running around after two other kids. And he ended up moving in with a woman who had just lost her husband and who was grieving the loss of her husband. And here is my husband ready to cook and clean and do all the chores. And this woman is still a good friend of the family. And she let us come into the home, sometimes as a whole family, while we were looking for a rental for our entire family. I was able to follow after the birth of our daughter. 6 months after he moved down here, the whole family moved down here. But this was an amazing relationship, and we were so grateful for this space. And it truly was just a room, but it was more than just a room. She became family. And anytime somebody can have that same experience, it warms my heart, because it was so meaningful for us. So I'm encouraged. I'm excited. Thank you for your presentation.
I appreciate what you have to say. You know, stories like yours, they didn't happen through HomeShare Oregon, but they are valid stories, and we capture them and we use them in promoting. You know, as a nonprofit, we're doing fundraising all the time, and the way we get those funds is by success stories or real life stories like yours. I might reach out to you, see if we can share your story. That would be very useful and might help in this community, establishing it as a valid way to provide housing. So thank you for your story as well.
Any others?
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
this opportunity. Mr. Myers, I have a stack of flyers for Teresa. Can I leave them with you? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Report from the city manager.
Do you want to report the Red Cross facility that we worked on and had all arranged for this weekend? They didn't need it. The water receded out at Riverstone, but we do have some connections now to help try to get some of those a little faster. We did show the Red Cross the armory. They were very, very impressed and excited to try to use it. It's just that we had just ripped the doors off the back loading area, the back ramp, which makes the building inaccessible for handicapped accessibility or anything. And so they can't use it until we get done with that. And about January 22nd is when we should be finishing that, and the building will open back up. So that was a good, successful piece. We received a note and a card today. This is from Nadine Kelly. For those of you who know, we have the airport car, the courtesy car out at the airport. She enclosed a check for $120. She's been giving us checks every, probably 6 months or so. This is donations that the pilots drop in the box when they get the key for the car. When they unlock the lockbox and take the key, when they come back, they usually put a few bucks or $20 or something in the box to help pay for gas or pay for maintenance on the vehicle. And so we've been getting regular checks like this. And she says, for the city of Cottage Grove, we want you to know how much the aviation community and us appreciates the city's generous use of the airport courtesy car. The 120 represents donations towards the usage from our fly-in guests. Thank you so much. And then she signed Sean and Nadine Kelly. They volunteer and help make sure the car will start. They go and start it regularly and make sure the battery's charged, because sometimes it does sit for several days before someone uses it, and they keep servicing it that way and let us know when there's real problems that we need to take care of as well. So wanted to just bring that to your attention, that it's still being quite successful. And actually, a couple weeks ago, I saw it parked in front of the brew station. So it's being used, and they're coming to our businesses when they use it. So that's all I have for my report. And we do have an executive session. So
Right. So we have no attorney, and there's no items removed from consent agenda. So we will adjourn or close this meeting temporarily and go into executive session. So the city council for Cottage Grove will now meet in executive session to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. And the executive session is held in pursuant to ORS 192.6602D, which allows council to meet in executive session to deliberate with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome audiences back in the room and adjourn the meeting.